the number of deaths, really, and as the COVID fatalities continue to stack up, what hasn't really increased is the messaging or the communications of anything really from the Office of the Governor. Shawn, you're a communications guy. How crucial is it in a time like this? And I feel like we've been saying the same thing over and over again. As we end up week 12 of this surge, just looking at some of the numbers in the last month, I know you were crunching. We're averaging over a death a day in the last month, right?
That's right, Chris. It's sad news this morning as we wake up to find out that a baby had passed, and it's we were talking about it since the start of the pandemic, and I think that when we think about messaging in these times, that's about as real as it gets in terms of the human cost of the pandemic to our community. When we think of response and the realism relative to it, there have been plenty of fits and starts, but it goes back to the idea that from the very beginning and maintaining that tempo, I think that that's probably been the biggest challenge. It's probably maintaining it, because there's going to be that want to do as much as you can, and then it tails off.
Yeah.
But if that tempo is maintained, that's what you're asking is, if we want to see more of it. But it's a challenge, and I think not just Guam, the other territories I know are having troubles with that. The states are doing the same, because especially when they're reopening, and that's been the biggest challenge. And I think for us, we're trying to reopen, and you think that messaging today is tough. You wait until we start to reopen, and we start to bring people to Guam and things that might happen. That's going to change the game as well.
Yeah, you talk about stops and starts, and it does seem that way. And what I've noticed with the messaging with the administration and the governor's office and just the coronavirus response is you find the community really picking up the slack, whether it's the media trying to do awareness campaigns on their own, right? Or just the community organizations like the Chambers of Commerce coming out and saying, hey, let's all be a little extra cautious. There was a recent editorial where they had a bunch of different former heads of the Chamber of Commerce coming out and addressing the people. And I think it says a lot when you have the business community talking to the public more than the governor and lieutenant governor. I just don't get it, Shawn, because you talk about a cost to pay. It's, to me, insanity that we're just willing to pay this cost of these people's lives, whether they're vaccinated, unvaccinated. I just can't believe that we're comfortable with that, and that we don't hear any explanation really about where this response is. And you talk about stops and starts. It's frustrating when they come out with a campaign. To me, the best campaign they came out with in the last couple months was don't wait until it's too late. So crucial, right? Because we're seeing these dead on arrivals, and they kind of started up and then it kind of falls by the wayside. And the numbers continue to come in, the deaths continue to come in, and I just wonder, where is that component? I mean, you as a former communications guy, how do you talk to the people at a time like this, 12 weeks into this surge, and how do you do it in a consistent manner so it doesn't become, where the hell is our governor after 12 weeks and 47 deaths in the last month?
Yeah, when I think of it, I go back to our Containing COVID talk about reassurance. That's what it boils down to. And when you look at the messengers, I was just looking at a study earlier today, and I've been doing a lot of research on the kind of who would be the best messengers for example, vaccine hesitancy and the like. And some of the research is saying that politicians aren't always the best. It's those trusted folks in our community, the doctors, the healthcare people. Those are better folks to kind of reach to those who might be hesitant to do it, especially if they're a familiar face, if that is your doctor, or if that's your physician. And also leaders in these civic organizations, as they're stepping forward, there's a level of, well, that's my neighbor, that's a guy who is trying to push our island forward. And you're right, Chris. The recent messaging by the Chamber of Commerce, that was very effective in terms of getting the former chairs, because these guys are not only leaders in the community, they are leaders in their organizations, and their organizations are saying, hey, listen, my boss is up, I think, and we're seeing it at our place of business, we should get behind it. It's being proactive. One thing I learned working for Governor Camacho is this particular phrase is that government can't be all things to all people. So when that whole phrase comes into play, and you think about the messaging done by folks like the Chamber, the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, the doctors of not only the Physicians Advisory Group, but Dr. Nguyen and others who are not part of that particular iterative process, these messengers, these trusted messengers are doing much more to get the word out to the heart and soul of our communities, because not everyone's going to be on Facebook Live. Not everybody's going to be on these social media platforms that they're putting more effort on, but they're just trying to get the word out, and that word is working. And I think I've seen it and I've heard it from my family, and I can attest that it is working.
Yeah, and you talk about Dr. Hoa Nguyen, who was a trusted advisor of the governor all the way up until just a few months ago when he resigned because of what he said was, political interference, and also over these mandates that the governor had put out targeting the unvaccinated that really haven't done anything to stem positive cases or deaths. And the reason why we get Dr. Hoa on is because we continuously reach out to Dr. Nathaniel Berg, who heads the Physicians Advisory Group, and we're just continuously ignored.
I was going to say, Chris, that you've gotten other members. I think Dr. has been on the show. I think he's been an absolute phenomenal messenger, totally. Especially with the patients that he sees. Dr. Jolene Uggan, who's been on your show, and via GMH. The series that was done by Tomas the last couple of weeks was a very powerful message. And if her voice and her message isn't heard loud and clear, I don't know what to say to the rest of the community. She is the front line. She is the face of GMH relative to COVID. And I think we all should, if you haven't seen it, if you're listening out there and you haven't watched or heard that series from Tomas, you need to get on YouTube and watch it, because it is an absolute big deal in terms of what GMH is going through. And I can share that hasn't changed much. And Dr. Jolene, again, another messenger in this fight against COVID. If we're not, as a community, seeing and hearing from these folks and listening on the link, then, man, we need to just maybe get the big Q-tip out and start to say, listen, we need to get a little more clarity, because they have been big voices in this fight against COVID.
Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
So far, once last year in what was like a watershed interview that we got here on this show with Dr. Jolene Uggan, and again this year, she was kind of like, if you can coin a phrase, kind of like the scared straight moment.
Yeah.
And she was like, all right, let me tell you from a human system standpoint what happens to you when you get COVID. And she described, what happens to the lungs, your endocrine system, your pituitary system, and everything like that. And she goes, all of the breakdown. And I mean, it was very, very frightening. And I think that was, by design. She's like, let me tell you. And she even said, she goes, if anybody doubts that this is real or that we're overtaxed, she goes, I wish all of you guys could just walk through the ER and like see the conditions and see, how everybody's like flying around and everything like that. And, the responsibility we now bear on a daily basis.
Yeah, Jason, that interview, I watched it and I didn't leave my house for a while. I was, and even as our practices at the store between my wife Trish and I, my kids, we really changed the way we were doing things. That's a behavior change based on a realistic point of view from a person on the front lines. And again, if you haven't seen it, do it. If you guys know Dr. Jolene Uggan, she's a very nice person. Mm-hmm. And I know she's stretched right now. I know she's tired. Yeah. And you got to give them a pat on the back once in a while. If you see those health professionals out there, if you're listening out there, tell them thank you, because they're doing a thankless job that I think at times we're not seeing behind the scenes, and the amount of resources that they're needing to continue this pace. It is, I think you're reporting it every day about the numbers of GMH, and it hasn't flattened. It has remained high.
Yeah.
If we need to take as a community a bigger stand, listen to these trusted messengers, and heed their words right now. Halloween's coming up and all these holidays. It's going to give us greater pause. We should just, again, we need to just say, all right, we just got to take another step back and maybe rethink all of our activities moving forward. I know we're trying to reopen, and I've said it on this show that our best way to get the economy going is to reopen, but be cautious when we do that.
Yeah. Shawn, to me, it's like this whole surge, these last 12 weeks, we've all been saying, God forbid it gets to the kids, right? And now we have an infant fatality. We heard yesterday the Physicians Advisory from Public Health came out about the multi-inflammatory syndrome. We're now tracking from one of our doctor sources that there may be 3 hospitalizations of kids with this condition. So, yeah, and when you talk about the series, which is a great series by Tomas Manglotnia, that was the whole point of it. Was we were looking out in the community and we were seeing the business community step forward because of the lack of messaging really from Adelup. And we said, hey, let's try and go into the hospital and tell that story. And so when we did go into the hospital, what I thought was interesting, it was exactly like you said. It was the same thing from last year. We're overwhelmed. We're tired. We've got admin nurses who have to get out on the floor because it's not just COVID that we're swamped with. It's also non-COVID hospitalizations, right? And so when you hear GMH saying that and you hear the business community coming out and talking to the people and saying, hey, let's do this together, but you don't have that component from our highest elected official, I think it's glaring. When so many voices are popping up, so many people are trying to make a difference and talk to the community. If you don't have our highest leader out here at least trying to do the same thing or explain these decisions or these undecisions, if you will, then I don't know how people can be reassured or even appeased. But Shawn, let's get into your new episode of your podcast here. Change gears just a little bit. So that's it. That's all podcast with Shawn. And you've got a great bonus episode, right?
That's right. I got a chance to interview Judge Johnny Gogo and a really great project that he's working on, his 48 star American flag signing project. It's an awesome way to honor Japanese Americans from the World War II era. And it's a great interview with Judge Johnny.
Can you give us a little context on who Judge Johnny Gogo is before I play the clip? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Judge Johnny Gogo, again, a product of Guam. He's a Santa Clara County Supreme Court judge. He started earlier this year in tribute to we call it those Japanese Americans who were interred during World War II, the plight of them, and the whole effort behind what would be called the Korematsu versus United States decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. It just speaks to, again, their plight, which is a bit different. These are American citizens who were dealt with differently during World War II, almost between that whole community and even Guam in terms of being occupied, very similar in some cases, American communities that were devastated by World War II.
Flags that you have a story, and I'm sure the flags that you have a story, and I'm sure the signed flags will tell, I'm sure, different ones. Can you share with me what you've heard from those who have signed your flag so far?
Yeah, as you indicated, every person who has signed the flag has their own story, and I think we're upwards of 700 to 800 signatures. And by the time I donate the flags at the end of January 2022, we'll probably have close to 1,000, if not over 1,000 signatures on probably 4 flags. And it depends on the age of the individual when they were in the camps. So again, some of them were born in the camps, some of them were 1 or 2 years old, and so their memories aren't as developed as others who went into the camps as young teenagers or even young adults. And those young teenagers and adults have a different viewpoint. Obviously, the hardship of being taken away from their their lives, right? Ripped out of school or work and their livelihoods, and given essentially maybe 48 hours or less to pack their belongings in one or two suitcases, and then hauled off to, they didn't know where they were going, and ultimately over 120,000 or so Japanese Americans were placed into 10 major camps.
Latest clip from the latest episode of That's It, That's All podcast with Shawn Gumataotao. Shawn, we know that you're a former advisor, well, not advisor, really a communications director. He's so many hats under the Camacho administration. But we wanted to throw out this picture that we saw on Instagram, sir, if you could, right? And this is a picture of, well, the one with the pretty prominent Republicans. Yeah, and so, Shawn, I don't know if you saw this, but this has got to be giving Governor Liu a headache this morning. It's a picture of, well, there's Ralph Scamilleri in there, and then you have Senator Jim Moylan, then former Governor Joe Atta, former Governor Eddie Calvo, former Governor Felix Camacho. So the three living Republican governors in this picture. Shawn, a lot of people talking about election. There's so many rumors going out about so many people. How does a picture like this kind of fit into, and I'm not saying anyone in this picture is running, but they put out a picture like this, and it definitely gets those Democrats talking.
Yeah, when I saw that image, and you guys shared with me right before we came on, I thought the image itself is, well, one, it's not Photoshop. That was actually, they were standing there at a function, and when they're all together, they're talking about what the future of Guam looks like, and how they collectively can bring about those folks into a room and to the community and bring forward maybe perhaps something that'll be a little bit different than what we're seeing today. And I'm sure that Adelup is listening and watching too, and concerned or not, I don't know. But for the GOP, it's almost time, right? The biggest contact sport in Guam, politics, will be kicking off in just around, let's see, 3 months, 2 months.
I think it's already kicked off.
That picture. It's going to be I know it's already kicked off, but when it really gets underway, January, everything is game on.
Did Mike Nicholas's kind of sort of announcement, like, was it last week, a week and a half ago? Did that kind of unofficially kick it off?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, of course.
That was kind of the starter gun,
did.
right?
But when I see that picture at this point, like in October, it's like, well, okay, we're about to get into the holidays. What's going on? Yeah. What do they got going? And it only piques the curiosity.
Yeah, I don't know. When I see a picture like that, I see that if you're getting this many minds together, then maybe the discussion is, how do we take back that majority in the legislature? That's probably the more attainable goal right now for the GOP. So I'm pretty sure they're shaking the tree and looking for their candidates, as is the administration. I know the administration is going to run a bunch of their in people, and so it's going to be a great battle. I'm so excited for it.
Oh, me too. I think, like I said, it's like the contact sport of Guam. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Right on. Okay, we'll see you, Shawn. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, thanks, guys. Again, don't forget to listen to the podcast on all those podcast platforms. And again, we're very happy to be part of the KWM Podcast Network. Some good stuff coming from KWM.
Yeah, and if you like that little taste of Shawn's podcast, we actually got it coming up later on from Shawn's YouTube channel on our Facebook timeline that's coming up later on this afternoon.
That's right. And Jay, the KUM Podcast Network, there's so much great content on it. Where can people find it?
Yeah, so just go to KUM.com, and all the way up at the top, we got that little navigation bar. Just put your mouse over where it says listen. You can either listen to either of our, right here on the Breeze 93.9 if you want to listen to the link, or some of our old school shows, or if you want to listen to more music, you can listen to Isla 61, or if you want to subscribe to any of the podcasts for on-demand listening, then you can check that out and see all now 13 of our shows under the network.
That's right, and we're adding another one later. We'll have the debut of Kate Baltazar Dodge's One with Grief podcast. Yep. Shawn, so you're in good company, my friend.
Oh, it's exciting times for the podcast network. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day.
Okay, see you. There you go, Shawn Gumataotao, 7/14. It's Friday, October 15th, year of the COVID 2021. We're going to take a quick break, and my dear people of Guam, stick around because we're going to tell you how to get free money.
Oh.
Yeah, free money. It's totally free.